1 John, 2 John, 3 John. Those are not what we're reading from. We're reading from the Gospel of John, and it can be found in the Pew Bible on page 91. You can also access a reading via your tablet or smartphone on our guest internet access. From John chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood or of the will of the flesh or of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John testified to him and cried out, "This was he of whom I said, 'He who comes after me ranks ahead of me, because he was before me.' From his fullness we have received grace upon grace. The law indeed was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. It is God, the only Son, who is close to the Father's heart, who has made him known." Blessings on this reading of Holy Scripture this morning. This is 2020. I thought I might do Barbara Walters, but I really can't do her. Baba Walla. 2020. Now, we're 5 days into a new month in this new year, and what has really changed around here? What has been thrown away, cast aside, stopped, removed, challenged, or refused? How well are those diet plans really going for you? Now, what has been started? What has been implemented? What has been accepted in this 2020? Because I can tell you this, what is going to be followed this year is also what will be obeyed this year. And what is obeyed this year will also be what is worshipped this year. And what is worshipped this year will also be what is loved this year. Has your loves changed? And what is loved will take the most of your time, your treasure, and your ability to keep and to sustain. That is what the new year brings to us. In this new year, our relationships with God and neighbors should set the priorities for each, the plans, as well as the goals, as it should every month, and really it probably should every day, with love of each being the overwhelming experience and response. Our neighbor should know we are friends of Christ, not because we say we are Christian, nor that we attend a building that is called a church, but by our reputation for love and our loving responses to not only each other, but to those beyond this gathered community. As the song says, they will know we are Christians by our love. Now, the writer of our scripture reading this morning is drawing from the very dawn of creation, the whole universe, in fact, and summing up the gospel in 18 verses of God engaging and acting towards the salvation and the restoration of it. Its first words remind us of the very first words in the book of Genesis. If you started reading the Bible for a year, you probably already read chapter 1 of Genesis 1, in the beginning. And much like the creation story it is echoing, we are given this Cliff Note version of what God's doing and what God has done and what God is acting and how Jesus came to be. This is the story of God right up until this point, this day, now, in this presence. January 5th, 2020. And the story of this God arrives to live among us and with us in human flesh and in all the vulnerabilities we face. This God is created everything, and everything created reflects the life and the light of this same God. That this life and light can be accepted or rejected reflects the nature of this God, asking and inviting rather than demanding and compelling, like most gods we choose to worship usually do. Now, the scripture says that God has never been seen, but God can and is reflected in glory of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. The story of Jesus Christ is the story of God moving in, living with, and dying for those who choose to receive the life and the light of this grace and truth. So on this 5th day of January in a new year, do we reflect what we have claimed to have received? Does Prairie Avenue itself reflect the one who has lived with us, the glory that we have seen? And what does this story, this presence of God living here among us look like in this time and place? What would we be doing if we acted as if God lived at 2201 East Prairie, Decatur, Illinois? This being God's address. Now, for that is what I can sense and see that God is calling us to become in this our 96th year of living at this address. A place where everyone we encounter knows that God has lived among us. And we reflect that presence in our daily lives and in all of our interactions. When someone meets one of us from this place, they should see and feel and sense that there are two hallmarks to our faith: love of God, love of neighbor. But how can love of God and love of neighbor be seen, be felt, or be sensed? By how will we learn, love, and serve God and neighbor in this year? For the mission of Prairie Avenue Christian Church is the same mission as it was when Jesus physically walked the face of the earth: to make disciples. Let me say that again. The mission of the church, the mission of Prairie Avenue in its 96th year, but the mission of the church has been for 2,000 years absolutely the same: to make disciples. Notice what I did not say about to make disciples. It doesn't mean to make members. It doesn't mean to make attendees. Congratulations. You have perfect attendance in 2020. Not to make fans and not to make friends of Jesus. But to make disciples, students of God, and yet also teachers of the faith, to transform the world. Not to win friends and influence people. That's another book entirely different. But to make disciples. The world is overwhelmed with members and attendees and fans and friends of Jesus Christ. We don't need more fans and friends. We need disciples of Jesus Christ. And often only associated with fair weather or Christmas and Easter only, or as long as what I say and what I desire happens, and God forbid you change that parlor carpet. As long as it agrees with my politics or my ideologies. Often when people only associate this way, they also will tend to walk away when it no longer works for them. Because the God they're seeking is a transactional God, not a transformational one. And as long as the transaction's clear and the balance and checks are fine, I'll worship. But as soon as they don't, I'm walking out. But the light and life we are called to in the gospel is a transformational one, not transactional. And I can tell you that a transactional God will disappoint you every time he fails to transact with you. So what would we be doing? Responding? How would we be thinking and talking about if God, in some manifestation, made 2201 East Prairie his forwarding address for this year? As disciples of Christ, I would hope we would be doing what is on our directory signs that you walk by every Sunday morning. It has a little motto there: to be learning, loving, and serving disciples of Christ from our doorsteps to the ends of the earth, and providing that with as much time, talent, and treasure as God has already provided for us to receive this new life and this new light into our hearts and into our minds. And I also believe that God has already provided for us the necessary resources, the human as well as the spiritual, the financial as well as the physical, to accomplish whatever God is calling this place to do, and for each one of us to be a part of and to do our role. So as one who has received both light and life, and seeking transformation always rather than transactions by request or by mood or by desire, I believe that there are a few of things that God is calling us to do and to respond and to think and to speak as part of God having his address be 2201 East Prairie. Here's just a few. Spreading the life and light of Jesus Christ in our youth activities and programs. Spreading the light and life of Jesus Christ in our facilities. Spreading the light and life of our partnerships and our relationships with organizations and groups and individuals that work in the transformational business. Spreading the life and the light of our learning, loving, and serving to our neighbors and those who have not yet seen the glory of God in their lives or in their circumstances. There are still some who have never beheld God's glory. All well and good, preacher. Now, how do we do this? How do we spread life and light? To spread the light and life of God that is within, among, and also beyond us, we will work wholeheartedly, unreservedly, and completely in the next 12 months to formally establish and hold our Stephen ministry classes and to establish those transforming agents of one-to-one caring ministry for those in crisis, right here, right now. We will establish and have an effective prayer and present prayer ministry to seek God's direction. And we will, in the coming year, transform our underused facility into a center for neighborhood revitalization and crisis response, including dealing with those who face addiction through partnerships and relationships with those who know how to handle addictions, rather than our transactional and impersonal needs or efforts. And to continue to open our ears to listen to our neighbors and to respond to the needs as if they were already participants in this community. Even before they've stepped into the building, even before they've sat in your pew, and you smile, and you move forward, even though it's the first time since the election of Lyndon Baines Johnson that you moved from your pew. Because with this work ahead, I also believe that God is calling us to reach, and I have a big, hairy goal here. We are going to reach, in 2020, 20 individuals. That means 20 more people looking for seats and trying to avoid your 1968 pew. 20 more people here at worship to commit their lives, to commit their time, their talent, and their treasure to Jesus Christ and his mission of making not members, not fans, not friends, but making disciples as they have been transformed by our already present God. Yes, church. The challenge this year, 20 new participants in worship by December 31st, 2020. Now, how will we spread this so we reach those at least 20 in the coming year with the light and life of Jesus Christ in our streets and our alleys, in the businesses and in the homes of our neighbors and our neighborhoods? You're already doing one of the 5 things expected of you this coming year. You're worshiping. I just ask that you worship every week you can. And if you cannot, our sermons are posted online. Unfortunately, we can't broadcast yet. We're having issues with that. But worship every week. I expect you to grow in faith, whether that's attending a classroom, attending a small group, joining a book study, or becoming part of the Stephen ministry team, or becoming part of the prayer team, that you grow in your faith, because disciples were always learning and growing in their faith. I expect you to use your gifts. I expect them to be used and found out and discovered through a spiritual gifts class that we'll be offering in the next couple of weeks. To discover your gifts and to find out what you're plugged in for. I know that this might be a change in our usual behavior here at Prairie Avenue, where we tell you what we want you to do versus asking you if you qualify for it and finding out that you don't. We're not interested in warm bodies anymore. We are interested in people using their gifts to the glory of God and the glory of His church. I expect you to give regularly. I'm not going to tell you an amount, but something consistent that says, I have bought this. I respond to this. My time, my treasure, my gifts are God's. And yes, finally, I expect you to share the faith of one that says, God lived among us. I have seen that glory, and I want that glory to be part of your life. Now, we make this awfully hard because we've made it awfully hard. Are you saved? It's not that difficult. Come and See was the first campaign of the church. Come and See should be the campaign of every church. If you think the music is great, the sermons are so-so, and you still make time for this every Sunday morning, I bet you have friends that don't. 93% of your friends will come to church if you ask them. That's a lot simpler than sending out a postcard. That's more effective than sending out a postcard. That only gets maybe 3%. Come, check us out. We may not be everything for you, but we may be something for you. So those 5 things, again: worship weekly, grow in the faith this year, discover and use your spiritual gifts, give regularly, consistently, whatever you can, however you can. And share the story. For God lived and breathed and walked among us, and we have seen His glory. And we are a reflection of what we have received. Thanks be to God.